Common may be known by his music fans for his conscious rhymes, but there is much more to this Grammy Award-winning artist than that. An emerging movie star and dedicated philanthropist, Common shares his rise to success, his doubts, and his greatest accomplishments. Now on Leading Men, Common.
A lot of people assume that I was Muslim, and some, may not even know what my spiritual background is. But I, believe in God, and I go to church, and as we say at Trinity, unapologetically Black, unashamedly Christian. That's who we've been, and that's who I am. Growing up in Chicago, I grew up on the South Side. It's a predominantly Black area. I was able to see some of the street side of things as far as life goes, and just playing ball, doing regular stuff that young men do.
He got a lot of spankings, but he was a good child. In elementary school, he was pretty much a straight A student.
With my mom being a teacher, educator, it was very influential in my life because she was always like, man, you gotta read.
When he was about 9, he became a ball boy for the Chicago Bulls.
It definitely had an effect on me. It was probably like my first job too. I was there when Mike first came.
As a matter of fact, he would give him his gym shoes after each game because he never wore the gym shoes. And so he would take them and he'd sell those gym shoes.
The little change I was getting was good for me. We had a lot of history as far as musicians go, from Curtis Mayfield to Maurice White and Earth, Wind & Fire. Well, the artists that have influenced me begin with Stevie Wonders and Earth, Wind & Fires and like the Commodores and Minnie Riperton. And I look at all the artists, that I respect throughout the years, whether it's John Coltrane or Bob Marley or KRS-One, they mean something to not only the music, but to a culture and to a people. I believe I first fell in love with hip hop around the time when the song Sucker MCs came out by Run DMC. The beat was just so hard and their rhymes was just so confident and cold that I was breakdancing to it. The first rap I wrote happened when I was like 12 years old, and I was visiting my cousin in Cincinnati. So to see some dudes like real close to me rapping, I was like, man, I could do that.
When you grow up in a house with educators, you're expected to go to college, do well in high school.
Very educated as a child, as a high schooler, and I went to Florida A&M for 2.5 years.
I joined Rashid at Florida A&M, and we started working on music. From there, we sent the music out to the New Music Seminar.
They had a demo section that you could submit your demo to be the best unsigned hype artist. So I submitted, Common's tape, his demo, and he was selected as the hip-hop artist for that particular year. There was a record company named Relativity Records. They offered him a solo deal, and that's kind of how it happened.
By that third year, it was like the opportunity was there to get signed to a label. It was just a dream, but now it's really close to being reality.
Once he got his record deal, I remember we moved to New York and were living in the Embassy Suites Hotel on 47th Street. So his first record was called Can I Borrow a Dollar? It came out in '91. The first album was a lot of the demos that he had been working on for years prior.
My mom's reaction was like, what? You gonna leave school to try to be a rap artist and get signed?
I'm not sure I knew what rapping was.
And hip-hop wasn't as big as it is now, so she couldn't even see the success that could be achieved in it, because that wasn't part of her world.
The rap world back then wasn't anything that I really wanted him associated with, or anything that I was really proud of. And I never told anyone my son was a rapper back then. But he reminded me, he asked me, Mama, why am I going to college? And I said, well, it's to get an education so that you can make a good living. So he said, well, I'm already educated, and I really read more than you do right now, which was true. He said, so if you give me a chance, give me 3 years, and I will make as much as I would have going into business and accounting, or I'll return to school. So we had that bargain, and he didn't have to return.
I was not a fan of Common, but then every time I would hear like his singles, I'm like, yo, this dude is really dope. But the album that changed my mind about him was One Day It All Makes Sense. When I heard these songs, I'm like, yo, he is more than just a rapper.
One thing that is consistent about him, he has maintained his foundation with Chicago, and 2, he does say something in reference to issues with social issues or racial issues.
You know, I feel like being called conscious is an attribute. It just means you're awake.
Electric Circus was my favorite album. I thought that album was a masterpiece. Sad, it was too ahead of its time.
Hindsight is always 20/20. He was at a certain point in his life where he wanted to just try something different. Unfortunately, a lot of times the public doesn't always want to accept something different because they tend to fall in love with you for a certain reason.
They expect Common to be the backpacker, hip-hop, keeping it real hip-hop artist, and he's not that dude.
He did The Light, which was probably one of his biggest records, so people always want to hear that love song from him. They don't want to hear the hardcore hip-hop song. You know, his whole career up until that point had always been a steady progression. It was the first time that he experienced a downturn.
Man, I doubted myself almost in between every album.
There was a period in his career when he doubted himself, and he even thought about, I'll just go back to school.
You know, I had the fear. The fear definitely would be like, man, am I going to have to go back and work a job?
It made him realize that, you know, you got to just keep at it. That it's not always going to be perfect, that everybody's not always going to appreciate the things that you do the way in which you kind of envision them.
Usually my inspiration comes from not only things that I'm seeing, but things that I want to see.
I think my first song that I really paid attention to and liked was Retrospect for Life with Lauryn Hill.
The song Retrospect for Life was about abortion, and I had experienced that, you know, and at the time it was really heavy on my heart. I decided to write about it. I've been through this abortion situation, and it's not good for anybody involved, you know, so, you know, let me get this out. Let me express it, and then hopefully what I'm expressing will encourage me to do better, and also encourage others to pay attention in that situation.
To think that a person can sit down and make a song like that, that's on the level of like Stevie Wonder. To me, I think Stevie Wonder is one of the greatest writers ever, and that's how I felt about Common when he wrote that song. I've
had people come to me and say, man, you know, I had my child because of that song. I'd be like, man, that's when you get them chills when people tell you that stuff. The Light was like a turning point in my career. It was the first time that I had a record that got played on the radio, like where people heard it a lot. I won a Grammy with Erykah Badu for the Love of My Life song, which was based, you know, it was off the soundtrack Brown Sugar.
I just look at him as Rashid. And to me, you arrived when you're a good person. And that's when I thought he arrived.
When he got that Grammy, we was like, people are finally noticing who he is. But I wouldn't say that's when he arrived. The time I felt Common arrived is when he did the B album with Kanye. That's when so many people opened up to Common.
My new album is called Universal Mind Control. This music is really like music you can dance to.
I stay fresh like a wrapped in plastic. Beat goes plastic, see galactic. Southside boy, we Cadillac it. Charismatic, Asiatic. I hustle